Titration reactions tell us a great deal about the interplay between an acid and a base. In fact, from a point of view of understanding acid-base reactions, that's the most important aspect of a titration analysis, where we plot pH against the added base or the added acid. But now we turn to the question of calculating the pH of a polyprotic acid. And a polyprotic acid is a molecule that contains more than one hydrogen. That is, it contains a hydrogen bonded into that structure, which, when it dissociates into water, produces an acid, and then sequentially the product of that first reaction can dissociate, releasing the second hydrogen, which produces the second H3O+. But calculating the pH of these polyprotic acids turns out to have a huge amount to say about the detailed chemical reactions between the atmosphere and the ocean, and it has a great deal to say about the control of climate, because we're going to study the carbonic acid dissociation in water, and carbonic acid is formed by the uptake of CO2 from the atmosphere into the carbon chemistry of the ocean. As we all know, CO2 is produced by fossil fuel combustion, so we're increasing the CO2 in the atmosphere, and this analysis allows us to understand the response of the ocean to that increased CO2, which in turn increases the carbonic acid intrinsic to the ocean, increasing the acidity and decreasing the pH of the ocean water. So let's take a look then at how we deal with polyprotic acids. So we're going to look first of all at the reaction of carbonic acid and water. So the reaction that we're interested in then is the reaction of H2CO3 plus water, and the first reaction that takes place is the extraction of one of those hydrogens from carbonic acid. And that gives us H3O plus the bicarb anion, CO3 minus. So the acidity that's intrinsic to carbonic acid is manifest by the release of that H3O plus. Well, we can demonstrate the way in which we handle polyprotic acids by taking a specific example. So let's take the example of carbonic acid at 0.05 molar. And let's calculate the pH that results from the reaction of that carbonic acid with water. So our initial concentration of the carbonic acid is 0.05 molar. Our initial concentration of the bicarb and H3O plus before reaction is 0. So the change in the reaction resulting from the conversion of carbonic acid to the bicarbonate anion is minus X, and we're producing an equal amount of the bicarb anion and H3O plus in that reaction. That means that at equilibrium we have 0.05 minus X for the concentration of carbonic acid, and we have X for the produced concentration of the bicarb anion and H3O plus. But now we have the equilibrium constant, so we can immediately calculate the concentrations. So we have concentration of the bicarb anion times the concentration of H3O plus divided by the concentration of carbonic acid, and that's equal to our first acid dissociation constant, because we've removed the first hydrogen from carbonic acid. And so we now know that the equilibrium constant is equal to the product of the concentrations of the bicarb and H3O plus divided by the concentration of carbonic acid, that's 0.05 minus X. Okay. At this point, we can make the approximation that X is small compared to 0.05. We can check that in the end, but it turns out in this case it's valid. And that means we can represent this as X squared over 0.05, and that's equal to the first acid dissociation constant and that is equal to 4.5 times 10 to the minus 7. So now we're ready to solve for the H3O plus concentration. It's just the solution for X in that expression. So X, which is equal to H3O plus, is equal to the concentration of the bicarb anion, and that is equal to 1.5 times 10 to the minus 4 molar. Now we can do a quick check and realize that 1.5 10 to the minus 4 is much smaller than 0.05, so our approximation is valid and we have accurate calculation of the H3O plus concentration.